Welcome to All Chalk, a podcast about the power of education to help young people speak up and build a fairer world. My name is Greg, founder at Smart School Councils. Every so often I come across a head teacher whose passion for driving change and giving every pupil a voice is really inspiring. And Lisa, head teacher at Horling Primary School, is definitely one of those leaders. At Horling, Lisa has created an environment where children genuinely feel heard and valued. And she's definitely a champion for developing that inclusive, student-led approach that gives everyone a say. So today she's talking about how she has approached this with the Smart School Council programme and how empowering students is really shaping their school culture. So, without further ado, let's hear from the fantastic Lisa, head teacher at Horling Primary. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Great, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me along this morning.
That's okay. It's your first podcast you've ever been on.
Yes, it's my first podcast, so there's a little bit of anxiety there, but hopefully we're going to have a really good discussion this morning about all things Smart School Council.
Yeah, definitely. I think you'll be great. And I'm sorry that I've made you wear headphones for the first time. So thanks so much for coming on. Do you want to tell us a little bit about you, your school, and maybe just like the corner of the southeast that you're in as well?
Yeah, so as you've heard, my name's Lisa Taylor, and I'm a head teacher at Horling Primary School. I joined Horling as deputy head teacher back in June 2021. Since January 2022, I've been head teacher, so 3 years now in that role. Me personally, I'm really passionate about all things pupil voice and the difference that it can make in creating a really positive culture, one whereby children are not afraid to put forward their ideas for making real and active change. And at Horling, pupil voice really is the forefront of all that we do. So if the children have an idea, we want to hear about it. After all, it is their school. So our approach is, let's hear it, see what we can do to make it happen. And above all, they know that their voice really, really does matter.
Yeah, amazing. Wow, what a start. I can't wait to dig into that. That sounds fantastic. And about Horling, where is it? Because I work with loads of people in my team. I work with loads of people from the north. And they always think of the south as like one big block, and they're like, oh, it's the south or the southeast. Tell me a bit about kind of Medway and kind of what kind of area that is.
So Horling Primary School is situated in Medway, but actually it's right on the border of Kent and Medway. So the community that we serve is quite diverse in that we reach out to a lot of different kind of areas, and our children kind of come. About 60% of our children, 65% of our children come from Horling and Upper Horling itself, but we reach out further afield. So we are quite a diverse community, predominantly white British, but there are a lot of other representations there as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. And did you always want to go into education?
That's a really interesting question. My parents were both in education, and as a young child, I did the classic, tea parties with the teddy bears, which then led on to sessions at school. And yeah, I've always been in education. It's something that I'm really passionate about. Is making a difference to the lives of our young people, and obviously with that comes their voice and making sure that they're actively heard, not just heard, but really actively listened to, and they're making positive change. So education is something that I've always been a part of, and I've grown up with as well.
Yeah, okay. You almost had no choice there.
No, I always had a choice. I think my parents would say maybe I made the wrong choice, but for me, I'm a firm believer that it was the right path to follow, and it's a very, very rewarding profession.
Amazing. That's great to hear that positivity, because you don't often hear that if you read the newspapers at the moment or listen to the press. What's it like being a head teacher? So obviously that's like a jump from going to working in a school to becoming head teacher fairly recently. What's it like?
Yes, so I was head teacher previously at another school, and then I kind of stepped back to the deputy head role, and then quickly realised that actually I wanted to be back in that head teacher role. So when the position became available at or when the position became available at Halling, I knew that it was the right thing to do to apply for that. Every day is different as a head teacher, as I'm sure you will have heard from speaking with other head teachers. You kind of can't predict it. Sometimes the best laid plans go astray. But for me, as I've said, it really, really is about getting in there with the children, listening to them and making sure that they're happy. Because if they're not happy, they're not going to want to learn. And obviously a huge part of that is giving them a say in what their school's like and what they can change to make things better for them as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I should say that I visited your school, I think it was last year or the year before, and I absolutely loved it, meeting the children, the staff and everyone. It was a very kind of welcoming and happy environment to be in. So yeah, I can definitely see that happening in your school. What was your kind of starting point with your school council? Did you have one initially? What was your kind of experience of what that could be like looking back the way, I guess?
Okay, so if I throw back to June 2021, when I first went as deputy head teacher, what became clear to me was that there were an awful lot of young people bursting with ideas and really wanting to have a say in how they could make positive changes to benefit the other children at Halling. I've already said Halling is, I don't think it did say actually, Halling's a 2-form entry primary school. We have approximately 400 children at our school, and approximately 18% of those children are eligible for pupil premium. What became apparent to me very early on was that in order to drive forward the pupil voice and support this positive change that I'm talking about, Halling would need more than what I would describe as a traditional school council. And by traditional school council, what I mean is a representative group of young people. So for what was then at the case at Halling, it was about 10 to 12 children who met weekly to discuss, plan and make those changes. And from the children's perspectives, they'd had successes from that approach, but they wanted to achieve so much more. So what we decided that we needed to do was to ensure that every voice was not only heard, but actually really listened to. And believe me, there were so many children at that point that were bursting with ideas for how they could make Halling even better. So our challenge essentially was, how could we get 400 young voices heard, keep the momentum going in support of their ideas and that change for everyone? So I'm just thinking of a few examples. Some of the ideas the children had back then, the main ones was that they wanted to improve the play and lunchtime experience through purposeful play. They also talked about fundraising for a range of charities at different points throughout the year. The school environment was a big one. They wanted to improve that in line with our golden rule, which was looking after property. So things like litter picking, things like that came to the fore. Things also such as introducing friendship benches. We had a group of children who were really passionate about the playground and how it's a big space. Sometimes children get lost and they lose their friends or feel lonely. So they wanted a place where children could go to, that children could come over to them and say, hey, do you want to come and play with us? I could go on. The list is endless, but that should really give you an idea of what the children initially came up with. And then at that point, that's when I got in touch with you guys, the Smart School Council, to get Halling signed up. I'd already experienced this at one of my previous schools. And I think what you do, what the Smart School Council does and still does, is to give us at Halling the digital tools and ideas that we need as a starting point. And we really did need that back then to bring their young voices to the fore and to make their ideas happen.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, it's a really good reminder of all the ideas that children will be having, but maybe don't have a place to go if it's through the kind of traditional approach, isn't it? It's that they sometimes don't get heard, I guess.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes it so different, is that the Smart School Council and what we've established, and I can talk through that, as we go on, but it ensures every child has a say in that decision-making process. At Halling, we're really firm in our belief that we want our children to be, we call them leaders of change. We empower them to bring forward their ideas in order to make a really positive change. So we adopted the model, your model of communication team, class meetings and action teams.
Yeah, great. Do you want to talk us through what each of those things mean, Lisa? Obviously, I know, but
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
somebody who's listening to this for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. I can talk you through that. So the communications team, we refer to them as the comms team. That's a group of children in our school, across years 5 and 6, who essentially run the model of the Smart School Council. So we have a democratic election in July, which is ahead of a new academic year, whereby year 5 children are invited to apply for the role of head pupil. There's a job description that goes along with that. And the job description shared, and they're invited to apply in writing for the role. So it's quite formal at that stage. They're then interviewed by me and Horling Smart School Council lead teacher. And then what they do is they pitch to the whole school ahead of a whole school vote, which we call election day. Now, last July, I think we had 16 children stood at the front of the hall. They each had 3 minutes and they pitched to the whole school in an assembly why the children should vote for them as Horling's next head pupil. So it's a really, really kind of special event. So then the vote happens, they're voted in. Then in September, what happens is those head pupils invite the children in year 5 and year 6 to be members of the communications team or the comms team. So, and they do that kind of how they want to do that. Last July, what they decided to do was to put together a job description. So in a similar way, they put together a job description. The children, if they were interested in it, wrote a letter of application to the comms team. So it's not to the adults, to the comms team, who then interviewed them. They then shortlisted, and the shortlisting process for the head pupils was interesting because obviously they had to take the emotion out of it. So it wasn't who their best friend was or who they were friends with in another year group. It was actually about ensuring that they had a range of skills around the table for their weekly meetings so that they would be able to work as a team to achieve their goals. So that's the comms team and how we form that. We have, I think it's about 12 members across years 5 and year 6. That includes the head pupils as well.
Yeah, fab. I've got a couple of questions just about the comms team, Lisa. I love the approach of appointing the head boy and head girl in July, but what's your reasoning for that? That's my first question. Why is it in July?
Yeah, we don't actually call them head boy and head girl. We call them head pupils. So we have 3 at the moment. I think it's 2 boys and a girl because, again, it's down to the pupil vote. So if 2 girls were voted in, it would be 2 girls if it was a boy and a girl, and so on and so forth. So just remind me of your question again, Greg, sorry.
Why in July? Why do you start that process in July before the summer break?
We changed that last academic year. Before then, we had been doing it in September. We wanted to get it in place ahead of the new academic year so that we could hit the ground running, and so that the comms team could be built early on. So within a couple of weeks, and then they were ready to go and hit the ground running. Okay,
so you're not like you're not starting the new year, running into Christmas, setting this all up.
Absolutely.
You kind of get it done quickly. And what type of questions? So the role of the comms team, small group of pupils helping to run the model, run the approach. What type of questions might the children have asked in that recruitment process? Who are they looking for?
Okay, so just thinking off the top of my head now, questions that they may have asked, in terms of the application. Why do you want to be a member of the communications team? Why do you think pupil voice is important at Horling? What difference do you feel you could make? Do you have any ideas for what we could change to make Horling a better place?
Great. Great questions. Great, better than my questions to you. I should have got some of those children on. That's amazing. And so what happens then? So you would have picked your comms team, 12 amazing young people. What happens then? What's next?
Okay, so the comms team and head pupils are formed. Then what happens is we move into the second part of your model, which is class meetings. And that is really the one way at Horling in which we ensure every child's voice is heard. What the comms team do is pose a regular question which is shared digitally with the children by class. The classes log in, a representative member in the class, and that role changes each week, leads the class question. They open the question, they debate it, and then they put their vote in. So what it does is it pulls together the votes across the whole school, which then come back to the comms team. So, for example, last week, they were asked their views on changing golden time to something called enrichment time, which is part of our annual behaviour policy review. And then this week, actually today, in fact, a question has gone out to them this morning to ask how they would like to dress for our forthcoming Diversity Day, which is at the end of January. So once the children have all voted through the class meeting tool, the comms team then look at the votes and they share the outcome. The children in the comms team feed back in a variety of ways. So they might go round to classes and verbally share the outcome. Obviously, they tailor that to the different age groups as to how they're presenting that back. They might present it in a whole school assembly and take the assembly, which they're getting more used to doing, which is fantastic to be a part of.
Great.
They could write a letter or an email to share the outcome, depending on what was being asked. And we also have a Smart School Council progress board, which all the children can see, and they might put up there what's happening and what the outcome is. But all the children at Horling know that they can go and look at that, and it kind of gives them an overview of what's happening at those comms teams meetings and what those decisions are that are being made and what the children are working towards.
That's amazing. So that's the way that you give the tools to your comms team, which might look like a bit like a traditional school council, but actually the big difference that you're doing here is that you're giving them the tools to reach everybody else, to make sure that everybody's voice is involved.
Absolutely.
That's brilliant. And so how often are you doing those questions? What does it look like if I'm a year 2 pupil and I'm about to take part in the class meeting? How does it work for me?
So the teacher will open up the link. We have a set time each week where this happens. So the whole school is doing it at the same time. The teacher will open up the question. One of the children will be invited to come up and lead and kind of take control of the mouse as such, or their finger on the whiteboard. And they'll read the question, and there'll be some different options there for them to choose from. They may get into groups, they may get into pairs, depending on what the question is, and they'll have a debate about which one they're going to vote for, but they have to agree on what they're going to vote for. And then the child who's at the front will plug the votes back in. And what's really nice about that tool is, although it is centred around a specific question from the children, there's always an opportunity at the end for the children, if they've got a burning question or they've got something that they want to give back to the comms team to discuss at their next meeting, they can jot that in the ideas section at the end, and then that forms part of the comms team meeting as well, to see what other things they could put onto their agenda each week.
Okay, great. So new ideas going back to that comms team. So it's quite a special role, isn't it? And I definitely got that impression when I met your comms team, that they treated it as such, that they I don't know, that they just had this really responsible vibe of like, this is a really good, important role for our school. I don't know. Does that resonate with you?
Completely. They like to feel that they are in charge. And absolutely. I mean, I always say a school is not a school without children. It is their school. So why not give them the power to make those changes, but in a structured way, with that kind of tolerance and respect that's so important. And actually considering, not just having a rash idea and, oh, let's do this, but actually they've got to then take that back to the drawing board and think about the different elements of that.
Yeah, amazing. And the last part, the action teams, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the third part of your model in ensuring that all the voices are heard is action teams. So at Horling, this is something that we're really pushing forward this year. So action teams are groups of children who come together to share ideas for changing something in Horling for the better. So, it could be a particular passion of theirs. And what the action teams enables them to do is to give them the power to make those decisions and become those leaders of change that I've spoken about. And the difference here is that anyone can form an action team. All they need to do that is an idea. They need some people to help them. So other children that may share that passion, or they might encourage some children to join their action team. And then also what we ask them to do is to have a staff member to support them. And that's really for the initial discussion of the who, what, why, when and where. And our children also know that the success of the action team is up to them, really, because it will only work if they make it happen, and they're really passionate about making it happen. So some examples of previous action teams, we've had bird watching club at lunchtime that they wanted to do. We have school houses at Horling, as most schools do. We only had 3 a couple of years ago. Some of the children came forward and said, why are there only 3 houses? We'd like a 4th house. And actually, we want them to be historically linked to Horling. So we launched a competition. They put forward names. There was a logo design. We've now got 4 houses. They've each got colours. They then took it a step further and said, right, well, actually, on a PE day, we want to be able to wear a coloured T-shirt for that house. Other examples, I'm just thinking off the top of my head here. Cake sale. We had a cake sale to raise money for a local charity, Holborough Hedgehogs. Give them a shout.
Yes.
So they did a bake sale and they raised money. We've had things like they wanted to have a Harry Potter lunchtime club, mindfulness colouring. The Key Stage 2 children, so our older children, wanted to be able to access fruit at break times. So they fundraised for a fruit trolley and they kind of did an order, so it's a bit like Young Enterprise. Okay. They then now ordering fruit each week, and the older children have the option of being able to buy a piece of fruit at playtime. So just a few ideas there.
Wow, that's brilliant. And I guess that's just reverting to where you started in, I think, 2021. That's where a lot of those ideas are going now, that into action teams or through into the comms teams. Hopefully they're not getting blocked in maybe the same way they would have done with the older approach. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's given them the impetus to think of things that actually, do you know what? Actually, if I, use my voice here, I can really push forward change here and make things happen. What they do is we use your action team form, which is great for us. They jot their ideas down on an action form. They go around pestering members of staff. Can you sponsor me? Can you help me? So they go around pestering the staff, which is great because the staff want to be involved as well. They then have that who, what, where, when, why discussion with them, and then the form is given back to a member of the comms team ahead of the next meeting, and then they discuss it round the table and they try and make that happen for them. And at Horling, we've got a really supportive PTA, incredibly supportive and creative PTA, and they actually give our comms team a budget of £500 each year. So that's how they finance various bits and pieces that they need. So, for example, for the mindfulness colouring club they wanted at lunchtime, they wanted some soft bean bags to put outside to sit on. So we bought some, from that money. But also the children are very proactive in, okay, let's do a little bit of fundraising here. So the friendship benches that I spoke about, we fundraised for those, and the PTA match funded that. And we've now got 2 lovely friendship benches on our playground, rainbow ones. And so the teams evolve and keep evolving.
Yeah, and I guess the point with the action teams as well is, you won't have started with all of that amazing stuff happening, would you? It's about kind of starting small and getting the other elements up and running first. You can't jump into having all this incredible work. It's more of like an advanced stage or level, I guess.
Absolutely. I asked actually ahead of this podcast, I asked some of the children what makes Horling's comms team great. So I thought I'd share some of those with you, because what they had to say, I think, just really, really does put it into perspective how powerful this has been for us. So this is what they said. Some of the things that they said. At Horling, it's important to know that your opinion matters. We always use fair voting and make sure every voice is heard. We even help shy children find their voice. We bring ideas to life and make things happen. We have a wide variety of skills, sharing, confidence and communicating. We're a diverse team, so we bring different things. We make sure that every child has the opportunity to participate if they want to. And we have lots of opportunities and ideas for fundraising. It's really good to help others. So that's, just a snapshot of what our children are kind of saying about the way in which we approach change at Horling.
Wow, that's really, really amazing. Thanks for sharing that, Lisa. I'll definitely have to come back and meet some of the children involved.
You're welcome to come anytime. We love a visitor at Horling.
Absolutely amazing. It sounds like, and I'm sure they're leading assemblies well as well. Definitely from what I've seen on Twitter. If for anyone listening who is a Twitter or X fan, Horling's account on Twitter, /X, is brilliant and very active. Definitely one of my favourite school Twitter accounts, so it's worth a follow. What's the handle, Lisa, if anyone wants to follow?
Yeah, it's at Horling, HALLINGSCH, at Horling SCH. Definitely
worth a follow. Thank you. What about your staff? So I guess obviously as a head, you have the ability to kind of set the tone a bit more in the school. How do your staff receive this? Are they like, oh, Lisa's talking about pupil voice again? Or I guess, are they on board? I mean, it certainly sounds like they are, but keen to hear a bit more about how they perceive it.
Yeah, I think, in any school, it's all about the culture that you try and create. And I think we've created a really positive culture at Horling in which, it's about staff voice, it's about pupil voice, and it's about parent voice. So it's about all of those stakeholders. So pupil voice is just one of the three parts of that. This kind of leads on to thinking about really, if you wanted to try this approach in your school, I kind of think you need to start with the end in mind. So it's really important that the staff are on board. So be very clear about what you want to achieve and why. And for us at Horling, it really is about empowering our young people to be those leaders of change by making that positive difference, not just in school as well now, but that's gone out into the wider community. If staff aren't on board, it's not going to happen. So one of the things that we did initially, going back to June 2021, was to use, and again, the Smart School Council in their tools and the resources online, they have staff meetings. They're set up so that you can, talk your staff through how it operates and how it works. Because actually, for us at Horling now with the action teams, the staff are very, I joked earlier about pestering the staff, but actually they're very receptive to that and they want to help them and they want them to, have that say and be able to, be empowered to make those choices and to make that change. But it is very much about the staff having an understanding of how the Smart School Council operates, about those three elements and their role that they play each week or every other week within those class meeting tools. Is really, really important.
Yeah, fab. And any other sort of final advice that you give to head teachers across the land who might be listening into this? What would you say to them about how it's helped you in your school to create this such welcoming and inclusive atmosphere?
Really, just to sum up what I've said, you've got to be wholly passionate about the children making a change. The staff need to be on board. They need to understand what that Smart School Council is and their role in supporting the children to have their voices heard. And equally, the children need to understand that their voice matters and that they will actually be heard and listened to. And actually what it means to be part of a Smart School Council is about being part of the bigger picture. So many of our children now aspire to be a head pupil and a member of the comms team when they get into year 5 or year 6, which is fantastic. They're kind of all talking about it come April, May, June time, and then the application process comes in. So that's something that they aspire to do now. And that doesn't happen overnight. It has taken time. You're talking now for us, it's our 3rd year now. So it's something that we have embedded in terms of the comms team and the class meeting tool, but now really the action teams are coming to fore for us. But it is definitely the buy-in from staff and the understanding, but also as well through our social media. You mentioned this earlier, Greg, the social media. that's really a platform and a window for the parents to see in and see what's happening. And we actively share things that are happening in our newsletters as well. So that helps get out what the children are wanting to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. I think I'd urge anyone who has an interest in what you're up to check out your Twitter account. And Lisa, honestly, big thanks, especially as I know how busy you'll be as a head teacher. And it's just great to hear from a head who's like really encouraging that positive and inclusive voice of all children across the school. So I'm very glad that you said yes to come on the podcast. So thanks very much. Thanks for sharing, and we'll see you next time. I appreciate your time, Lisa. Thanks very much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, take care.
Such a brilliant chat from Lisa there. I really appreciate her time in coming along. If you want to explore using Smart School Councils to develop a similar impact in your school, then get in touch with our charity. We're really happy to hear from you. You can find us at smartschoolcouncils.org. So that's singular school and plural councils. We can't wait to hear from you. Have a great day.